All right, let's get started with these questions, guys. Uh, so first off, uh, how many parks do we even have in the city?
So in my research, what I'm showing, and I'm just going to throw a number at it, probably right around 25. And again, like I said, when we're done, if I have some email addresses, I mean, we got spreadsheets that show the parks we have, and then we also got a document that shows not only all the parks we have, but the amenities in each of the parks we have, whether there's a basketball court, whether there's a playground area, and then also, so I mean, if you want me to go through some of them, obviously we have the big ones. You have Celebration Park, which is actually one of the parks that we actually have a fund and a budget for. It used to be the wave pool. You guys are probably too young to remember the wave pool. I just turned 50, so but it's now been turned into a splash park, skateboard park. There's a playground there. Most recently, one of the facilities in that area has been converted over to an actual office space for Paul Reinch, our director of water and wastewater. It's got the urban tennis courts there as well. If you've been by there, you kind of see that there's a lot of work going on. That's a city-owned property. However, a lot of the parks we have now, and we get into detail further, aren't actually managed by the city anymore. Some of these we have like either a cooperation agreement with or a lease agreement that we allow another entity or organization to provide services and improvements because we don't have the funding or the staffing for it. So the tennis courts going on right now within the area of Celebration Park are actually managed by a group called the Urban Youth Tennis Corps, Farrington Douglas and Ken LaCuro. So they raised over $2 million to redo the tennis courts and pickleball courts right there. So that's their project. But through an agreement with the city, that's how that happens. So that's actually at this point no city money or no city management on it. And then right across the street from all that, you got Crayola Park. But you got the fitness court. You probably recognize that a couple years ago we just were able to put together a couple $100,000 of volunteering money and grant money and stuff like that to put the fitness court up. It's right out there by the road on Fordney across from the YMCA. So that's kind of in my mind like park that's actually, we do manage some there because the water park, the water features. We do have some staffing there. We got 5 coordinator positions this year. Unfortunately, with COVID and relief funds, we can't find anybody to work, so we're down to limited hours. But normally that's open from Memorial Weekend through Labor Day weekend from 10 to 7. Right now we're only open Friday and Saturday from noon to 6 because we can only get 2 people to work that right now. But I'd say that's our biggest. You got Bliss Park. I mean, I'll go into any detail you want, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. You guys know what happens at Celebration Park. But Celebration Park, Bliss Park across from Covenant Hospital, Crayola Park is right across the street from Celebration on Fordney by the YMCA. You got Deindorfer Woods out off of Weiss Street by the Veterans Hospital out there, north side of Weiss. You got Fordney Park, that's off of Gratiot behind the fire station. Jay, I may need some help with some of these because I could be pulling a break. But we got Germain Park, Hoyt Park, obviously, right off of here on Washington Avenue. That is another park that is managed by a group called the Friends of Hoyt Park. Larry Brethauer is their president. They're a recognized 501c3. So through an agreement, a separate agreement with them, they do fundraising and they provide all the recreational opportunities. We do assist them in many ways, non-financially. We help them in cutting the grass the best we can. We help them sometimes in taking the baseball fences down in the winter so that when they flood it, they can have ice skating in a small portion of that. So we do a lot of, laborious type work as we can to help them, but that's another one through an agreement that they maintain Hoyt Park. Linton Park at 2826 South Washington. Otto Rozier Park over on Van Buren. Vincent Park at Howard and Emerson. Lawrence McKinney Park, Vets Memorial Park. That one's that was one of the ones that was through an adopted park program. Patricia Boulware, Miss Boulware, God bless her heart, the amount of work and effort she puts into, just community work. You see her on Facebook. She's a blessing. So she's actually with her group adopted that park. I don't know how she does it. Wix Park Obviously Wix Park from Fordney, just south of the YMCA. It's 2 miles. It wraps. So when I say Wix Park, you got Wix Park Drive, and that basically goes from Fordney just south of the YMCA there by M46, 2 miles south, and it comes out on the M13. But a majority of the park area where the playground equipment, the tennis courts are, comes off of down there by Naval Reserve Drive, and further to the south. That would be, in my opinion, as far as we call the entire area park. But and then south of that, around the curve, there's kind of like a little lower bowl area there where some people like to fish, where the Shiawassee River and the Cass River and the Saginaw River all come together. And then there used to be soccer nets and that, because they played soccer and all that down there. And there are actually a couple pedestrian bridges that will take you over the King Drain on the south end of the park if you wanted to walk down there by the wildlife refuge. Then you got Ojibwe Island. I think I mentioned that. I talked about the Garber tennis courts. We got the Lee Street boat launch. I don't know that you necessarily consider it a park, but it is a vast area of land. I don't know. I'm going to say 8 to 10 acres probably down there, parking lot and grass area that could be used. Greenpoint Nature Center. That is obviously managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, a gentleman named Lionel Grant. It's a city-owned facility, so through an agreement, we do have some maintenance responsibilities and stuff on the building itself, but for the most part, anything out of that area is managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We have the Japanese Gardens, Japanese Tea House. Yoko Mosner used to be the director of that. There is a board through an agreement with the city. The Japanese Tea House board, for the most part, does the fundraising and managing of that. The city, through the agreement, has designated just over $48,000 a year. Annie, you know this because you see it every year when we pay it, but we do give them $48,000 a year to manage that facility, but they bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars for projects and capital projects and for services that they offer there to educate people to the Japanese culture. Masumi now is the new director over there. Yoko has since retired, and a young lady named Masumi is managing that for them, and she's doing a great job. You got Weddock Park at Weddock and is it Hoyt? Park Place at Park and Hoyt, and then you got Unity Park down on Leon Scott and Needham. That's going north of 13. That's it. And then we got Potoff Park behind MCVI, Garber Management Building. Water Street. They're over there off of Water Street. If you're familiar, behind the post office, it kind of starts. I'd say right over here by the Holland Street Bridge and goes north all the way to like downtown behind up to like the Genesee Street Bridge. So I think that's the parks. So, and I mean, there used to be like Merrill Park, Civitan Park, all of those when we got rid of our Parks and Rec division in the early 2000s were managed at one point. I can't remember the group. We did have, I think, Annie, you probably remember, at one point we had an agreement with the YMCA for about $250,000 to help manage some of those. But then when we couldn't financially afford that, that kind of went away. And then I can't think of the group right now, but Lewis Stevens and Michelle McGregor, and there's a group that used to manage even Merrill Park and Civitan for us and keep basketball and some different recreational opportunities open. But that kind of, I think, fell apart too. And then some of the buildings had some structural issues, and we since, I think, have had to close them. I don't think there's anything being offered out of most of those now. So I hope that wasn't too much. I know you just asked for the number of parks, but I was assuming you were probably going to want to go into the list of them. And again, I will email the documents that have all the stuff I kind of just talked to you about to you guys.
No, thank you so much for that elaboration. I definitely didn't think there were 25 parks in the city of Saginaw, but that's really cool. So it must take quite a bit to maintain all those parks. So where does the revenue to maintain these parks come from, and do we charge any entry fees?
Yeah, so, and Annie, you might even be able to help me out here. So again, and I don't want to go back, and I don't know the numbers. 2003, although it was a long time ago, it don't really seem that long ago, but I wasn't in charge of parks way back then. I was the city engineer for like 13 years. I became the director about 8 or 9 years ago. So Parks and Rec were gone long before I became the director. So my understanding right now, it's anything related to taking care of the parks would be a general fund function. I mean, I oversee a multitude of funds, enterprise funds, which is water and sewer, gas and weight funds to do the roads, rubbish fund, but anything facility or parks related would come from the general fund. And then it's up to city council and the city manager to determine where those revenues are designated to. And again, going back to 2003, I think at that time with our issues related to revenue, the council and mayor at that time determined that they could no longer financially support Parks and Rec. So they eliminated, I mean, I used to have a division head and 10 to 15 staff members, and I don't remember the exact number, don't quote me on it, but it was somewhere between $2.5 to $3.5 million, I think, at that time. But because, then you have to pick and choose, what are you going to fund? Are you going to fund public safety? Are you going to fund, back then we probably had 150 to 200 police officers. We might have had 100 firefighters. I think we're down to 50 police officers, and I don't know the number on the firefighters, but we just did not have the general fund revenue to support it. But that's where it comes from now. That's for the maintenance of, if you're going to do any capital projects. But however, right now, other than Celebration Park, we do have a budget. There is a city budget for that. I got them numbers in front of me. The Lee Street boat launch, we have like a $25,000 a year budget for that. Celebration Park, we have this year's budget is just over 100,000 for that, and that all comes from either general fund or revenues created. So the boat launch, we charge fees for the boat launch. So for the most part, the fees generated for that cover the costs. And then other than that, we have about 4 years ago created a Parks and Ground maintenance budget, which this year is at 369,000. There's a lot of like indirect, I think we only have 1.5 to 2 positions funded out of that, and that's mostly just to cut grass. I mean, we have like 8 groundskeeper positions. Seasonal, them are year round, but seasonally we try to hire 10 to 15 temporary employees through employment agency fees, and we used to get a lot of volunteer help from a group called TriCAP, Tri-County Community Adjunction Program. Gary Davis is the president of that group. However, the states changed their rules allowing those individuals, and I don't know, it's kind of like, I don't want to misspeak here, but the TriCAP, if you know that, it's kind of like a halfway house, or where people go to where they have to, they can go out and work during the day, but then they have to show back up at night and sleep there, but they have to give so many hours of community service because of however their sentencing was. And we used to get, I don't know, 12 to 18 of those individuals as well, and we're no longer getting them. So this year we're down 25 to 30 people that we used to use to help maintain, to cut grass, to weed whack, to do painting projects or special projects. So mulching in the park. So all of those parks, we really don't do any maintenance at any of them, other than cut the grass and do the weed whacking. I mean, if you notice, Deindorfer Woods, there's been some stuff done over there, but that was through the Northmore Neighborhood Association, who at one point adopted that park, and they did some fundraising. They worked with Consumers Energy some time ago and were able to raise about 300,000. So through an Adopt a Park program, we worked with them to do the capital projects. I mean, they find all the money, and it's their money. A lot of these groups work through the Saginaw Community Foundation. They're like their fiduciary. So if they're managing the dollars and they're not technically city dollars, then I kind of work with the neighborhood group or the Adopt a Park group and Renee Johnson at the Community Foundation to do the project. So the money never really comes. There's a lot of time invested by myself and Jay, because we manage those projects with them. But other than that, there's no staff to, and then especially this year and last year, we're way behind on even grass cutting and weed whacking, because I just don't have, I mean, I got to take my 8 people have to cut cemeteries this year because I have no employees in cemeteries. So they're trying to do all the vacant land, all the right of ways, all the corner clearances, all my parks, all my facilities and cemeteries. So we're just way behind. So A lot of some of the stuff we do in the parks you might see is through a DNR trust fund. So even though I don't have no staff and people, we still try to do all we can to beautify some of these parks the best we can. But the higher, I'd say the ones that I envision being higher use, like Celebration Park with the splash park and the skate park, that in my opinion is one of the most highest used, especially in the summer. Ojibwe Island, we most recently got a DNR trust fund grant. So the DNR we do apply every year or every other year for trust fund money. We've been successful to get that for Ojibwe Island. And that's some of the funds that were used when we did the improvements at Celebration Park, when we converted that park over from a wave pool to a splash park and to the skate park. We did apply for some DNR trust fund money for Wix Park. That's to kind of convert that from a road over to a trail, and it'll be part of the Iron Bow Trail system. We were successful in getting 3. And most of these grants are for, we asked for the max 350,000. And a lot of times we'll overcommit some funds to the DNR trust fund because they do require a commitment. And that's where some of the general fund dollars from the city will come in. So like the Ojibwe Island most recent project, when we renovated the bathrooms and we added a trail over there, that was maybe a $450,000-$500,000 project, but we had 350 from the state, and then we matched it with some city money. And then I worked with Brian Lecco, and I believe at that project, the county parks gave us $105,000 or $110,000 towards that Ojibwe Island project as well. And they have in past projects participated financially as well in some of our projects to do improvements in the city parks. I don't know if that answers your question. And we don't charge entry fees. The only place we charge entry fee is to the Rush Street Boat Launch. And that's a $7 daily or a $35 annual pass.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yes, that answers my questions. So how did the splash park and the skate park come to exist? And you may have touched on this a little bit already, but how are they funded and maintained?
Yeah, so the way they were built and constructed, and I got a couple council communications. I mean, my mind as I age is, so it looks like most of this stuff was done in 2010. So I think the demolition of the wave pool, if you remember the big slide tower and all that, obviously we had to, that stuff was so expensive, the big pumps to turn the water, and we didn't have the funding to basically restore them. The demolition of that stuff occurred, I think, around 2008 or 2009 to allow for the construction of the new skate park and the new splash pad. And again, most of that money was by, I got the council communications in front of me here for both of those. Apex Contractors did the skate park. It looks like their bid was just over $510,000, and we had a DNR trust fund grant of $450,000 for that. So I believe back then, so the difference between the 450 DNR grant and the 507 is like 57,000. So that probably would have been covered by maybe some money from the community foundation or even a city match at that point, which would have been general fund dollars. And then that was for the skate park portion. And then the splash park portion, that contract was given to J.R. Heineman back in February of 2010. So I'm assuming the construction happened in the same year. Their low bid was 571, just 572,000. So, the difference between that as well would have came probably from an application request through the SAG, because a lot of the match, we do go to the Saginaw Community Foundation a lot. They oversee a lot of trusts that are all about working on these type of projects. I wasn't the director at the time. I was the city engineer, but it was either going to be general fund dollar match or some money through some other type of donation or grant that would have paid the difference between the two. But you can see most of the projects are paid for by the state through the DNR trust fund. So that was to get it constructed. Now to oversee the maintenance and the management of it, those are general fund dollars. And there's not a lot for capital. That's mostly just for operating. And I mentioned that budget amount earlier. So we do have a budget, a Celebration Park budget. It's 101,7580. And that total amount proposed for this year is $100,000. But most of that money goes to paying for the water. So the splash park runs We used to actually pump the water. It was like a pool. We would treat it through a sand filter. We have to test it, but you know, we were getting a lot of issues with bacteria and stuff. So we decided to pump that straight to waste. But we're saving a lot of money on electricity now because we don't have to run pumps, because that whole system now runs just on water pressure. So we have like 50 or 60 pounds of water pressure in our water line that feeds that. There's no longer pumps running. Every year we burn up a pump. The pump was $6,000 to replace. We had to shut it down because we'd have high HPC, heterotrophic plate counts, or you know, some type of E. coli count, and you know, you have to treat it like a swimming pool. You had to shut it down. So now, if and when we ever get up running, last year was COVID, so we didn't run it last year, so there was some savings there. This year we're running it on limited days because we don't have staffing, but we only budget for 5 people to run it, and they're just seasonal people. So our salaries amount of that 100,000 is only 26,000 plus 15, so like 40,000, and then the water we need to run, it's 40, so that's 80, and the rest would just be for different maintenance type items if we have to do some painting or replace some parts. So to my knowledge, that is the only park that we actually have any dollars budgeted for to maintain, to do work with, outside of just cut the grass and you know, just weed whack and cut grass, you know. But we do, like Crayola Park, we'll work with a lot of volunteer groups. Every now and then we'll get a group come to us that says, hey, we'd like to paint Crayola Park, but can you buy the paint? So then we'll buy the paint through one of our other facilities division accounts or something. Like I said, it's not a budgeted parks account, but if it's just a matter of a couple, I'm all about 400 or 500, 1,000 here, 2,000 there, to have a group come in and do all the work. So we do a lot of that. A lot of what you see would be, you know, yeah, go high, get outside for a healthy environment, or healthy inside. They're kind of adopting Wix Park right now, so they want to rip a bunch of stuff out of the park that's no longer usable. So we work a lot with people, groups that are willing to help in any way, because it's all to the benefit of the city. I mean, I hate telling anybody no. I mean, you'll very seldom get a no. It might not be exactly what you wanted, but we're all about. A lot of people don't like that about me, and Jay's kind of a lot like me, but hey, this is all for the benefit of the city. I don't just say we don't have a Parks and Rec, so we're not doing anything. If somebody can bring something to me and they need a little bit of help, we're going to help any way we can. It's just I don't have financial resources for a lot of this. But Jay and I are pretty creative, so we try to find a way we can help any way we can, you know. So I hope that answered the money, any and all of the money that would have to come to the city, at least that I'm aware of, for operation and capital improvements to the park, would be a general fund. It'd have to be general fund, so either city property tax or city income tax. I think we only get, Annie, you can help me, but right around 30 million for that, and 60 to 70% of all general fund dollars go to public safety right now, is my understanding. And then you got an indirect pension obligation and retiree healthcare costs that are on top of that. So it doesn't leave a whole lot of general fund dollars left to do much with, especially with the property tax cap, which is a double cap. It's both a dollar cap and a millage, a 7.5 mil cap. So there's not a lot of general fund dollars left after you look at public safety, which is very critical. So it's not easy decisions for council to, you know, I know they want the best parks in the country as well, but it's just a matter of how much money do we have and what can you do with it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I know you've talked about this quite a bit already, but I think it's a really important thing to emphasize. So how many employees are assigned to maintain the parks, and are the parks their only responsibility? And if not, what else do they do?
So in the facilities division, again, we don't have a parks division. We have a facilities division and a weed abatement division, but the weed abatement division has nothing to do with parks. They're pretty much a division that their sole purpose is to cut any grass that's in violation of our noxious weed ordinance, which is mostly your vacant lands or your lands that are owned that people aren't maintaining. And so if your grass gets 9 inches or taller, you're basically in violation of our ordinance. But to answer your question, there's only one fund that's designated solely towards parks and ground maintenance, and I didn't get a chance to look at my personnel complement, but based on the amount of salaries that's budgeted there, we have 10% of the administrator budgeted there, which would be 10% of Jay. We have 10% of one of our labor foremen budgeted there. So not an entire person, just 10% of their time. We have two maintenance, two persons, both are budgeted 10%. We have two groundskeeper twos. This is showing anyway that they're both budgeted 100% there. One groundskeeper, 10%, and administrative professional 10%. And I'm the public works director. I spend a lot of time in this area. I'm not budgeted any in it. So if you added all those up, we have two groundskeeper twos and 10% of 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 people. So you got less than 2.5 people in their entirety budgeted for parks ground maintenance. And like it says there, maintenance, no capital, no improvements, and that's solely to to do what we said we do. A lot of that is to work with adopt-a-park groups and to just do our best to cut the grass and weed whack. And most of our parks, we're probably not doing a lot of weed whacking. We're probably just mostly cutting and moving, the best we can.
Right.
And I don't know the amount of acres, but if I had to add it all up, I mean, you're probably what, 500 or more acres, 500 to 750 acres of parks, probably.
Yeah.
I printed that out. I got all that too.
And that's the new mowers we just had to get to.
Yeah, we were able to just purchase two new 15-foot wing mowers. They're the real big. They're $100,000 each, but our equipment, our newest one was, I think, 15 years. The one we're getting rid of was 30 years old. So
yeah, 1989.
Yeah, that was when I graduated high school. So yeah, the newest one. So we were able to. I'm not sure yet where that money came from, but it would be a general fund. Yeah, we financed that. But I do have somewhere here our total acreage of our total acreage of all our parks, but I'm sure it's somewhere around 500 acres or so, which is a lot of grass to cut. So then you ask yourself, should we just cut grass to cut grass? Because in my opinion, if there's a certain park out there that isn't being utilized, I don't think we should cut the grass. I mean, I think we should focus on providing the best maintenance we can on our highest used parks. So if we cut every park once every 15 days, does that make sense? Because we're probably like Wix Park right now, the south end of Wix Park. There's nobody's using it down there. It used to be soccer, but nobody manages soccer. So we're actually working with a couple farmers right now that come in and they let it grow and they're baling it for hay. I mean, they're cutting it at every foot to 18 inches. We don't have to cut it. They're having a resource that they're able to use that hay then to feed their livestock. So I'm looking at more areas of the city where, I mean, because once this stuff gets 3 to 4 feet tall, I can't go in there with a normal mower and mow it and make it look nice. We go in there with a brush hog and then you got a hay field anyway. It looks terrible. So any of these, and I don't know the name of the park right now, but right across from we're looking at Weber Park right now. I think it's an 8 to 10 acre area. It's over there by the kitty corner from the YMCA. So down by 40 and 46, it sits real low. A lot of times if it gets rain and wet, you can't get in here anyway. I'm looking at that as an area to maybe quit mowing. And, if you let, nobody's in there playing or anything anywhere. I mean, I think we got a lot of other parks that could be better utilized. So if we can, the limited resources we have, if we can use those more in more highly areas that are being used, I think it makes more sense than to just go out and cut grass to cut grass. So we're trying to do a lot of that too, instead of like Wix Park Drive, instead of cutting, 200 feet wide, the whole length of the 2 miles, we should just cut from the drive back to the river because that's beautiful. And then maybe only 2 passes on the east side of the drive and then let Mother Nature. Because I think in time, you guys know, if you don't cut and trees will grow, I mean, flowers grow, some of the stuff, at least in some of these parks, it'll go back to what it was before we started cutting it all out and turning it into something. I mean, that's my opinion on it. But sorry for such lengthy answers.
No,
I get to talking, I get to talking.
No, we appreciate it. We're learning quite a bit, and it sounds like you guys have a lot of land to maintain with not so many people. Um, and so, given that some more money would probably be really helpful to maintain these parks, do you think that a city parks tax millage would be helpful?
Oh, I think it would be great. I don't think you'd get it passed. I hate to say that, but I just, I think a lot of people are strapped. Everybody would like to have, but I just don't know what the affordability is of any type of millage. I mean, I've been here 21 years and I've only been a part of, I don't know. I mean, the public safety one obviously passes every year because I think everybody understands the significance and the importance of that. I mean, that would Annie be something that, and I'm thinking with all the questions coming up at some point, not only with cemeteries, but also parks, that would ultimately be a council decision to decide whether or not they'd want to go out for I mean, it couldn't hurt to ask. And to me, it's just another tool in the toolbox. I mean, we could definitely do a presentation and share, where we're at financially. And I think everybody understands that they eliminated the parks. Now, whether or not you'd have to go back to the 2 to 3 million or whatever that budget was in the early 2000s, I don't know. But any extra money would help because we just don't have the people, the resources to do it. And I mean, to me, if you take it to the vote of the people, two things can happen. They either approve it, which is a win, or they deny it. And to me, that's a win as well, because then all we can say is, we don't have the resources. You guys say you want parks and you want nice parks to be maintained, but you also denied the millage. So if there's no other funding mechanism, to me, that's just another tool in the toolbox as well. Because we talked about doing that with our roads, because we got just the same issue with our roads as we do our parks, and there's not enough money there as well. But early on, there was an opinion poll. It never went to a millage, but TV5 did an opinion poll of the residents in the city and whether or not they would support a road millage. And I think just the opinion poll and not a true millage, but I think it failed 85 to 15 or something like that. Um, so I mean, no, it would be that any additional resources in any amount would be definitely a benefit to the division. It'd be more, and I'd like to say it'd be more stress on me because I'd probably have to add staff, but it actually would be a lot less stress because the problem Jay and I got, we both care so much, and I hate telling everybody that calls that we don't have the money and we don't have the people, because that's the truth, but it's not no answer I want to give. I'd love to be able to provide the best services for everybody, and we do the best with what we got. So it actually is frustrating to me because the calls are coming in now. I mean, thankfully we haven't had a lot of rain, but with this kind of heat, when it starts to rain, I'm not going to be able to keep up with the grass. I mean, you could literally turn your head sideways on a blade of grass and watch it grow. So we feel terrible. I mean, honestly, I'd love to have the money to give everybody anything they want in any of these parks and keep them cut once a week. Because really, you should be, this time of year, you should be cutting these things twice a week. When the grass and that, sometime right now around June through, it gets real hot and dry. But the rain, us not having much rain, Jay and I have been very happy because it keeps the grass from growing. But no, and so I don't know, Annie, help me out. But for every 1 mil based on our property tax value of 400,000, my understanding, every 1 mil generates about 400,000, because I think we have a 3.5 or the 7.5 mil property tax only generates like 3.6 million, and then the dollar cap is like 3.6 or 3.7. So I wouldn't want to say, but just so you guys know, I think if you'd went out for like a 1 mil, one mil, I think would be somewhere around $400,000. So 2 mil would be about 800,000. 3 mil would be 1.2 million. So the public safety millage, I think 7.5 mil, if I'm correct in saying that. So just to give you an idea, and I don't know right offhand, 400,000 would be a blessing. Obviously would that help us? For sure. Would it give us what we need? I don't think so. And that's just for maintenance. That isn't any capital improvements. If you're talking about adding playground equipment and, doing different stuff like that. But, some of this stuff could be the capital improvement side of it. We could continue to write DNR trust fund grants and then use some of the millage money as a match towards some of that. And then continue to work with the county, because Brian Lecco and the county board have been pretty supportive in a lot of the projects we've taken to them financially.
And if you, I guess just before I continue, I guess a part of that was also a hindrance that, of course, as you mentioned earlier, is the tax cap, on both sides of it. But you mentioned how many they play a big part in the maintenance of the parks. Can you explain a little bit the relationship between Covenant and Bliss Park?
So the relationship right now is Covenant uses it a lot, I believe, because their employees, you know, they love to, when they get a break, you know, I go by there and I see them walk across and they have picnic tables, and I think some of them will have their lunch breaks or have a cigarette break out there. So I've had myself and our facilities division have had a great relationship going back to Tim Tinney, who was the Covenant's facility director. It's now Jeff Berger. We work greatly hand in hand. Most recently, we've been approached by a group over there. They're working on adopting that park with Jamie Forbes and Clint Bryant, who are some past council members. I don't know all the names right now. I'm pretty sure Jeff Berger's involved. Beth London, my deputy director, and Jay are working with them. They're having some community meetings out there to determine what their ultimate goals are. I know there's been some plans from years ago drafted to make some improvements. So right now, we're for the most part just cutting the grass over there and weed whacking. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of any, I mean, I can't think of a most recent capital project out there, but we are just starting to work with that group. I think they turned the paper, they turned the paperwork in to adopt it. So once that gets kicked off, and they do some fundraising in that, we'll work with them, similar to do some improvements. I know they want to do some path improvements and maybe, but I mean, for the most part, I think that's one of the parks that still has some decent bathrooms and you know, and a nice pavilion area over there, but it could use a lot of other work to add some additional amenities to it. So that's where we're at with that relationship. But
And Covenant rents it out a couple times a year for a couple of events.
Yeah, Covenant will rent it through our special event application.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware of them doing any improvements or any maintenance over there. The city's, you know, the limited amount, again, like I said, and I could tell you in the last 20 years.
But then I think they maintain there's a flower bed that's just across from the Harrison Street facility.
Might be, yeah.
There's a couple benches. I think their maintenance people take care of that and plow that sidewalk and everything along there.
We used to have, I believe the Bliss Park family who gave that park to the city. There was an endowment fund that had some money set up that was intended to be used for the maintenance of that park. And we'd spend about $3,000 to $5,000 a year. We'd hire an employee, and I can't remember her name, but and we'd buy flowers, and you know, but several years ago that money got used up, so then that program went away. Yeah, Jackie, a lady, she actually unfortunately passed away. But there was some, and I don't know the whole history, but when the Bliss Park family gave that park to the city, they set aside a certain amount of money as part of an endowment to be used towards the maintenance of it. But we $5,000 to $7,000 a year for probably several years, and then that money got used up, and then you know, the city never set aside any more money on top of the endowment to be used towards it. So we just cut grass and weed whack. Cecilia kind of went away for a minute. I think she lost signal.
There we go. Sorry.
There she goes. I thought you were sleeping for a second. Your eyes just froze. I said she's tired of listening to me.
No, a little bit of.
And that's okay. A couple council members do that to me every now and then too. So I'm okay with it.
How do our Saginaw parks and operations compare to some of our neighboring cities and townships?
I don't, other than Celebration Park, there's no comparison at all. I think, and I can't speak for them, but just from what I see, I think, and when I say this, I drive through Saginaw Township a lot. I drive through Tittabawassee Township a lot. I drive through Thomas Township a lot. Not so much Bridgeport. I think communities like Buena Vista, Bridgeport, Carlton probably suffer similar to Saginaw. in the effect that we don't have the revenue sources that Saginaw Township, Thomas Township, and Tittabawassee Township. I don't see their budgets in that, but I can tell you just by driving through the communities that, at least in this area, I mean, don't even want to talk about Frankenmuth or Midland, but at least adjoining Saginaw City, I don't think we compare. I mean, I think our Celebration Park area is just with the river. I think having the Saginaw River flow through it and Ojibwe Island, and I mean, it's beautiful, I think, as far as that goes, but we don't have the resources they have. Saginaw County Parks, they have their own, I mean, they're just a parks department. So they got a very good revenue source and are able to, they got staffing, they got equipment, they have the ability to do capital. So, I mean, I think for the resources we have, I think Celebration Park is a jewel in this area. I don't think there's anybody that has anything like Celebration Park in Hoyt Park. But I think some of the outlying parks is where we lack. I mean, like, could we do more for Dindorfer Woods, or could we do more for Outer Rozier? Could we do more for Germain? Could we, other than, Bliss Park, I guess if we had, if we still had a funding mechanism in place, some of them things would probably have a lot of the amenities that some of these groups are trying to already look to put in. But I think for what we have, we've done a phenomenal job of getting some DNR trust fund money and putting some of these parks in.
And I'm just going to hit real quick on, we're getting neighborhoods coming in that have parks near them that have been a lot of problems. And one of them is the Germain Park. There's a citizen that lives right across the street from the park. And he helped back in 2002, I think is when they redid that little park. He's living in his mom's house. He was there. He helped get that park back up to a real nice park. He says he wished it would have never did it, that it was gone, because it's nothing but problems, shootings, gang violence. That's all that's in it. He said you don't see little kids coming and using the playground equipment. It's the other stuff that's happening that is sad.
Well, that's unfortunate too. Like Jay said, what we're seeing, like even on Ojibwe, is like, and I don't know if it's just because it's been the COVID year and people been in lockdown and now they're getting out, but just, since we've closed that to vehicular traffic, the people that we actually want using it can't thank us enough for. They feel safe walking it. They're taking their kids out there. They're having picnics. They said they couldn't do that back in the day. And then again, I mean, the gates open, people are driving in the infield, tearing up our lawn, or throwing whiskey bottles. I mean, we don't have the staff. I mean, it's we barely have enough people to go out there and take a bag out of a can if you were to put litter in a can, but they're just throwing it everywhere. And to me, it's just creating an eyesore. So
4D Park, we just had a construction company have to do $9,000 worth of work because somebody set the porta johns on fire right next to the building, and then it did damage to the building, and so we had to hire a contractor in to take care of the damage to it.
Yeah, we're getting, I think, with them being open, and then even Patricia Boulware just called us, asked if she could lock the gate over at Vets McKinney Park, because she's having the same stuff happen over there now. So that it's sad. I mean, I don't know that any other, I mean, I can't speak for them, but I don't know that, I don't hear about it anyway. I don't know that any other community is battling the same type of issues. I don't hear about that in Saginaw Township. I don't hear about that in Tittabawassee Township. I don't hear about that in Thomas Township. So why the city? I don't know. My opinion, though. I don't. I
don't. You've kind of hit on this a little bit. What are some of the unique challenges in maintaining safe and well-kept parks, especially Ojibwe Island?
Man, I'm a public service director. I mean, I don't know what people do and why they do it. I mean, fortunately, I haven't been able to get out there when a lot of the stuff recently that's been going. I mean, I've been out there to the KCQ Fest before. I mean, when the 80,000 people and, no issues, and some of the different events out there, I've personally walked it. I mean, I don't know. And I almost don't want to go on record with my opinion on it, if you don't mind. So, it's a shame. I mean, I'd love to have that thing open to both vehicles and pedestrians, but the problem you got is I think 10% of the people ruined it for 90% of them. You know what I mean? It's like, you got 90% of the people that, even if you had it open to vehicular, would go out there and respect it and use it for its intended purposes. But unfortunately, that 5 to 10% that choose to do something other than what its intended purpose is, you know, I mean, I can't control that one person that goes out there in a car that wants to tear up the infield, and you know, I can't control the people that are waving their guns around or throwing their whiskey bottles out the window. I mean, but them type of people there are keeping the people that we really want out there using it, that are taking their families out there to have a picnic, or you know, or out there skateboarding, or so I can't answer you, Jay. I don't.
Yeah,
Annie, you got an
Same
opinion
thing.
on that? Do you guys have Cecilia and
yeah. What's your opinion?
Kevin? Could you guys? I mean, what would be your opinion on that? I don't know. I'd like to hear. You know, because it's each of our own opinion. I can't state facts. I mean, it's a beautiful location. I mean, it's.
Oh, I think the question was just weird for specifically with just like the unique structure of Ojibwe, being that it is an island, and like having specific access points. I think that's more like what the question was, its intent was. But yeah, I think just with COVID, with everything going on, with a lack of resources and just different challenges to Saginaw, that I think we've taken a big step back. I've participated with La Union Civica, and they're putting on the Cinco de Mayo celebration over the past couple years, and just the large decrease in issues we've had in putting that on. And then, of course, with some of the recent happenings, it does seem like a few, definitely a big step back.
Well, and you're right, and you made a good point. And I mean, I think we're always so used to something positive always going on out there, but with it being closed and nothing, like none of our special events happening, you know, I think with a lot of those going on, especially over the weekends, and it being controlled because it is a special event, limits some of the other type of activities. But I think with none of that happening for the whole year, you know, it's just different.
Yeah.
And if I can add too, I mean, I agree with Phil as far as the cause for the problem, because the problem, we've always had challenges in maintaining, a safe environment at Ojibwe, mainly because there's only one way on and one way off. And if you have hundreds of people and dozens of vehicles, and somebody, fires a gun, or God forbid somebody has a medical emergency, even if it's not violence related, I remember a 4th of July when I was a kid on the island, and there was some sort of scuffle. And I remember, people kind of just running towards us, and we were seated. And so trying to get, emergency vehicles onto the island when we have a lot of the stuff that's not a planned event, when it's not a gospel fest or the Cinco de Mayo event, or light up the city and things like that, because we are able to enjoy the island when those things happen. And I think in absence of that, the only activities you're hearing about are the negative ones. But I would say too, it is probably a very small, one bad apple ruins the bunch. And I think that with COVID and everything, we've exacerbated all the problems that 10% was already facing in the community. So when they are, free to go out, and they are free to, enter the public space, I think there's a lot of anger and destructiveness that people have had bottled up. And I don't necessarily blame them for feeling the way they do. I just blame them for being destructive and not allowing us to have nice things. And I had something else, and I can't remember, but if I do, I'll unmute myself again. But it is frustrating, and it's definitely something that it's nice to hear that you're hearing from so many people that having the limited car access to the island is helping, because we hear it from both sides as council members. We have people who are very angry that the park is closed down. I know our manager was able to share with us as a council some information on what some of the tentative, hopeful solutions are that maybe can go in tandem with the cameras. But then, that's the situation we're in. We don't have money for cameras at every single park. Even if we're working with groups who have adopted them, if you still just single those ones out and you separate the ones that nobody's investing their time or energy in as a community group, we don't have the ability to put them up everywhere. So I mean, it is definitely a challenge. It's definitely something, people can be angry with us for not having the vehicle access open all they want, but the outrage and the anger, if someone were to be harmed in the island or any of our parks, and that's mainly what we're trying to avoid, because the worst case scenario is something really bad happens, and at the end of the day, those of us and at the city staff, carry the responsibility for making sure that those bad things don't happen. So there aren't any really perfect solutions right now, because it sounds like we have 2.5 people and no money really being generated at all to maintain these parks, let alone invest in them and make them fancier than they are. And we have a tax cap, and we've had a dwindling tax base. So, I applaud Phil and his staff for doing everything that they do. And I do want to point out, citizens will sing the praises of our staff for going out and addressing a specific challenge, like cleaning out a lot and mowing it and stuff like that. But those same people who are out there getting the praise for mowing that lot or attending to that, that dumping issue, are frequently the same people who are, then tasked with doing the very basic mowing in these parks and stuff like that. And the overlap and the responsibility, and I just want to repeat this for the public, the overlap in that responsibility is genuine, and nobody's really sitting around at the public works office waiting for work to come in. They're actively running from event to event. And it's similar to the police department, but I mean, everybody on staff from department to department are usually moving from one thing to the other. I think somebody told me within the last month or so, and I'm sure Phil can correct me if I'm wrong, but somebody, we had staff mowing, and they had to stop mowing to go deal with some destruction of property that had occurred over at the skate park. And then maybe I'm getting that because it wasn't Phil who told me, so maybe I'm, but it was basically something that you had that same crew, going work, doing their day-to-day job, and they had to stop what they were doing to go deal with, with whatever had happened. And it's frustrating, and I just hope the citizens understand that, there's no one to blame here, at least locally, when it comes to this stuff, because the people we have on staff are, really doing the absolute best they can with the resources they have. So that's just my thought.
Well, thank you. And you're right. No, somebody took it upon themselves to go through all the trash barrels full of trash and debris in the bottom of the skate park bowl, the picnic tables. They busted them up, and I don't know. I hate to say it, and I don't really. I talked to some other people from some other communities, but I mean, for a municipality, in my opinion, to even have to think about putting cameras up at every park isn't right. I mean, it just ain't right to me. Why do we need to put cameras up at our parks? I mean, if they're being used for their intended purpose, I mean, it's just frustrating with me, but it is what it is. I mean, it's a tool we now need based on what we have happening at some of our parks. But,
really quick, and because I remember what I wanted to say, and I apologize, I'll make it brief, but the island, being a safe place, we had pre-prom events being held on the island. I think this year and last year it didn't happen with the pandemic, but I mean, that had been a centralized location that was offered up years ago as a safe place for our students to come gather, show their gowns off, show their outfits off, show their cars off. It was, limited to tickets, for people to show up. And because we had our police officers chasing, pre-prom events throughout the city, they'd disperse it in one place and they'd move to another. And of course, a lot of the time they were, private property and disrupting the neighborhood, or they were public property and, angering a store owner because they were trying to, find a large place to gather. And of course, one year, unfortunately, the catalyst to starting this alternative pre-prom event was because we lost a young woman at one of these pre-prom events. And so I wanted to remind people of that history, because we offered up the island and came up with this beautiful alternative to these pre-prom events. And then everybody could go and do their thing, and we could do it all safely. And now here we're at a point where, we've had to limit it to traffic, because we're afraid that one of those tragedies is going to occur on the island. So I just wanted to point that out, that was one of those safe places that we had designated for a pre-prom event, and that was a big deal at the time. So
yep. Thanks, Annie. Yeah, just so everybody knows too, we are short over 25 people right now, whether they're paid, unpaid, or volunteers, to maintain everything in the city. I mean, just like I said earlier, we technically hire 10 to 15 people through a temporary staffing company because we only need them seasonally. We normally get 12 to 20 individuals through TriCap program. And then we used to get a lot of volunteers, but since the pandemic and that last year was the start of it and all of this year so far, we are short 25 to 30 people to maintain our parks, to cut our grass, to do cemeteries. So the 6 to 8 bodies we have are doing what 30 to 40 used to. So if you're seeing tall grass and lots, I'm saying people are cutting my cemeteries right now because when the loved ones come out on Mother's Day and Memorial Day, and they don't want to see 3-foot tall grass. So guess what? But now you got 5-foot tall grass on corners and vacant lots because we can't do it all. And people are working. I got anybody from 50 to 65 years old are working 60, 70 hours a week because I'm putting them on overtime because I can't do it on straight time. So I'm paying more money after hours than on weekends. But these people are wore out.
They just came to me this week and said, they're not working Saturday. They're done.
So it's not easy. And that's, even back before when we could get those people, it's still, it's a battle. So yeah, we don't like to tell people when these complaints come in, it's due to lack of resources and lack of staff, but that is the truth. That is the truth.
And then just so the public knows, how can they reach out if they would like to, if a group would like to adopt a park or to volunteer or anything like that?
So they can call the Public Services Department. Heather Howe, who works for me, she oversees the Adopt a Park program and the volunteer program. She works for Jay and I. Same thing with Jay. We're willing to take on anybody to help in any way. So we have several different types of forms. I mean, if they wholeheartedly want to adopt a park, there's an Adopt a Park form they can fill out. We have a new Adopt a Space form. Most recently, council approved. It was the first of its kind, but a group's taken over a space underneath the Court Street Bridge to work on cleaning that area up and doing some painting projects and that over there. And we also have a volunteer group form, which would probably be most of what somebody might want to fill out. If it's just a 1 day or a 1 week, it for the most part just indemnifies and hold harmless the city in case somebody happens to get hurt while they're doing the cleanup they want to do. And they can call Heather Howe at 759-1662, or they can log online to the City of Saginaw's website, and all those forms and documents, if they go into the Public Services Department, would be online as well. But the easiest thing would be to just call Heather and give Heather their information and what it is they would like to do. And if they'd like to sit down with Jay and I, we'd be more than interested to spend some time with them and see, what is it? I mean, how old is it? How old are the kids? Are they going to provide supervision as part of their, because that stuff all matters. We just can't take 14, 15-year-old individuals and throw them on a lawnmower or give them a weed whacker because there's some safety issues in that there. So it depends on, what they want to do, how many, what days, and we'll try to work with anybody in any capacity of, so that would be the best way to get a hold of Heather at 759-1662.
All right. I think we're down to county parks, which I know we're city parks, but I just want to know if we have, how many, if any, county parks do we have within the city limits?
Yeah, so the only county park that I know of right now in the city limits is Borchard Park. It's right across from the courthouse. That is actually non-city property. It's owned by the county. It's county property and it's a county park. So it's in the northwest corner, straight across from the county courthouse on the corner of Michigan and Court, that very small Borchard Park. I know that Brian Leckel and myself, and Annie, you're aware of this, has been working with the DNR and Racer Trust Fund, who took over the old Malibu. So there's a large portion of property off of Salt Street, just west of the Center Street Bridge on the south side, that's going to be turned into parkland. So that'll be another one. It won't be owned by the county, but it's going to be managed by the county. So they're looking at just turning that into more of a trail type system. Other than those two, that's the only ones that I know that are owned. But I can tell you that our relationship with Brian, most recently, the city did sign a memorandum of understanding, and I got a document of that allows the county to do a lot of, Brian Leckel and his team, they do a lot of programming and recreational opportunities or have in the past anyway, not so much recently with COVID, but every year they fill out a special event form, and our memorandum of understanding allows them to do programming in our parks because they do have a millage, they do have staff, and I appreciate what Brian does in the city. He does a great job, and hopefully our relationship can continue. But this is just from, and I don't know if this was a year or two ago, but these were potential city park events and locations. So June 23rd, and this was a Friday, but this I think was obviously not this year and not last year, so this would have been like 2019. But they were going to do a welcome summer picnic family fun day at Bliss Park. They were going to do a Go Gaga for games at Ojibwe Park. They were going to do a Water Wars did do at Deindorfer Woods. Another fitness fun day at Ojibwe. And a July 13th Art in the Park at Ojibwe. A hang time thing at Bliss Park. And there's all the details behind it. Square in the Air at Deindorfer Woods. Go Gaga for games at Bliss Park, Fitness Fun Day at Deindorfer, Parachute Fun Games at Ojibwe. So they do a lot of stuff for the youth in that, and try to bring some of these one day, a couple hours. And I know they do participate with the Fish and Wildlife Service on Ojibwe Island every year. There's a National Free Fishing Day, and I know there's a lot of bike giveaways and fishing pole giveaways. And so for the most part, Brian Lecco has done, and I think is going to continue to do so. Not only in his own county parks, but also in city parks, provide those opportunities. And that memorandum of understanding that we have between him and the city not only allows them to do that, but also allows him to financially support a lot of, or some of our projects that we work on when there's DNR trust fund money, because he knows we don't have the resources. So the county and the county board parks work very well with us through that memorandum of understanding. And then we work a lot together with Renee Johnson and the Community Foundation. Most recently, and I don't want to misspeak here, but Midland Dow Corninger, through one of the foundations, gave $1 million to the Bay region, the Midland region, and the Saginaw region. And we were initially given 100. There was $3 million. They gave $1 million to each community. 100,000 of that was designated towards specific projects. One of them, we put in a canoe launch down by the old Wix Park boat launch. If you guys are aware, there's a Cache River Trail group that has access points, and anybody, if there's a canoe or a kayaker, you can launch and you can get to different parts throughout the Cache River, the Shiawassee River, the Flint River, the Saginaw River. So we actually work together quite a bit. But obviously they have more resources, but we assist each other in any way we can.
I think that covered all the questions I had for you under county parks, which was basically just how we work with them, and what benefits we get from paying into the millage. Do you happen to know how long we've had that millage in place for county parks? And do you happen to know how much revenue we contribute from the city to it?
Yeah, so Annie, that's a good question. I know a while back when we were asking for some money, I got some information from Brian on this. So the most recent information I have is from 2016, and I don't think it's changed a whole lot. I don't know that the park millage has increased or any since then. So this information might be pretty good. So at least back then, Brian is telling me that in 2015, the county parks had a millage between 1.2 and 1.3 million. It was a 0.2942 millage rate. So what he was telling me back then is that in 2000, and I don't know if this stuff's true, this is coming from Brian, but this is stuff we could get through the county. I mean, this stuff's all, I could probably Google search it right now and get it for you for any given year. But he was saying that in 2015, the city of Saginaw was 9.61% of the total taxable value of the county. So he was saying approximately 125 to 134,000 would have came from the city in that year of the 1.2 to 1.3 million. So they're basically saying of the county-wide parks millage, about 124 to 134,000 dollars comes from the city towards that millage. And I can tell you that in working with him, that's kind of the number I use in my mind whenever we're asking for match money towards DNR trust fund projects. And I think with them taking over the Racer property now, some of that funding is probably going to be used towards that. But I think that's what he and the county board always, the parks board always keep in the back of their mind when they're looking to support the city. You know, whether it's through these programs that they run or through some financial support. I mean, they just gave us 100 and some thousand towards the Ojibwe project. There's some others there. They did the National Fitness Court. They gave us a financial contribution of $15,000 to $20,000 towards that. So, if them numbers are accurate, and not that we hold that right to the penny, but that's kind of the number that we kind of work together. But you also have to keep in mind, not only I understand they pay into it, but we also have to recognize that a lot of the city residents do utilize county parks outside of the city as well. So it's not like you can just say, well, the city residents pay this, so you guys need to give this money to the city. I mean, I'm sure they're out using Haithco Park. They're going to be, you know what I mean? They're out using Emmerman Park. I mean, there's so many parks. The rail trails, I believe the county parks maintains all of our rail trails. So anybody that gets out and uses the rail trail. So he has a good, a good argument there that a lot of the city residents, because they do track that. I think there was one time they took a poll at Haithco, and I believe a majority of the people going to use Haithco were from the city. So, the lake, the Haithco Park out there in Saginaw Township.
I do believe that at least in years past, I don't know if it's their continued practice, but at least in years past, they had waived the fees for city residents as well if you had an ID. So even if you're a city resident going out to the county parks. And I guess my point in asking those questions is because we don't have a city parks millage, and we do have a county parks millage, we're investing in our county parks. And even though there aren't too many in our city, they're investing reasonably back into our parks. And I want to point that out, number one, to the citizens, that we are doing everything we can to build relationships and maintain positive relationships with the entities around us so we can, maximize the best possible services we can provide through those partnerships. And two, I want to point out as well that I think the last number Lori Brown gave me was around 130,000 for the last year was the contribution from the city. And if you think about all the things that they've been able to do because we've been making that contribution, and if you stop and think about all of the things we could do for ourselves if we were able to fund our own local government adequately, because we could get an influx of money and it could go towards the parks, because on the one hand, we need that kind of youth programming and we need that investment in those kinds of activities to curb some of the negative activities that we're seeing on the front end. But at the same time, when we get any huge influx of money, it always goes towards, the pushes towards other things, or even across the board, raise, and it's never anything completely significant. So I hope people watching, realize that what an investment like that through your tax dollars can do when you yourself as a taxpayer, and I know we're all strapped for cash, I know we're all going through things, but I just want to point out that, good things can be done with our tax dollars when we make the decision to invest in our community. And if we start looking at those things as more of an investment on our end, maybe the citizens can think about lifting the tax cap one day and maybe allow us to do a lot more than what we're able to do now. But I just want to thank Phil and everybody from his department for everything that they do, because they are spread thin. I've worked with Phil for a long time, and I've known him for probably even longer. And I think the only thing bad I've ever heard about him is that he doesn't say no. He spreads himself too thin. And that he's always going, and he's always trying to give somebody, the closest to a positive answer for whatever problem they're facing. Because again, with every other department that we've talked to for our local government 101, our staff really invests their heart and soul, and it is personal for a lot of them, and it's very frustrating and heartbreaking for a lot of them not to be able to do everything that they know our community deserves. And I think that's important, and that's why I really appreciate you guys participating, because not only did we learn a lot, but I think we get to see your heart for service and how important it is to you, and how well, the level of service that you provide to the citizens, and the integrity that you guys have when you carry out your jobs, and how hard they are, on top of it. So I'm just very grateful to you all.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We're grateful for you too, Lanny.
Means a lot, Phil. Means a lot. Kevin or Cece have anything else?
No, thank you both. I was really excited for this one. So
Too. It's been a hot topic out in the community, definitely. Kevin, do you have anything else you'd like to add or ask?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today and providing all the valuable information that you did. And I hope that the people who are listening to this will really consider what they've heard today and come to realize how, you know, we've only got very few people who are out here, you know, cutting this grass and changing the trash and picking these parks up. So what that means is that like even you just as one individual can make such a difference if you just volunteer a little bit of your time to help out. You know, whether it's, I mean, I know a lot of people around here got big fancy mowers and, you know, commercial grade weed whackers and all kinds of stuff and some free time on their hands as well. You know, get out there and do something about it. You know, a lot of us walk around these parks and we carry grocery bags with us to pick up the dog's waste. You know, if the dog doesn't leave behind a surprise, take that bag and pick up some trash with it. You know, be proactive and do something because, you know, even you as just one little person can really help out.
Yeah, we appreciate that. No, that would, yeah, because everything that somebody else don't do is one thing that we have to do. And the longer we have to spend to pick up debris that wasn't placed properly in a trash can keeps us from moving on and doing something else, cutting a vacant lot, cutting a cemetery, keeping the facility. So I appreciate that comment yeah, just put trash where it belongs would be even as simple as that. I mean, if you can't volunteer to come cut grass, I love that. If you're out walking and you see a bottle laying next to a trash can, the simple as picking that up and throwing it in the trash can would help us, you know. So
Absolutely.
we appreciate that. And we appreciate you guys taking your time today to ask us questions. Jay and I were so stressed out over this because we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. But I feel a lot better now and definitely appreciate the questions and your guys' comments. And we're here for anything. That's what we're here for. So
Absolutely.
Thank you both.
sorry about that.
Oh,
Oh
go
yeah, I
ahead.
was gonna say sorry about that history question. That was me trying to be lazy, not going to all the parks and reading all the plates.
no problem. Pleasure meeting you, Kevin and Cecilia. Wish you the best in your college here, Kevin, and Cecilia. Love the fact that you're a U of M fan. That's okay.
For your time, guys. This
Yeah.
has been nice. So much.
Thanks.
Have a good day. Thank you.